TomoNews presents Tension in the South China Sea. What has China been doing in the South China Sea? The South China Sea has been a source of much tension in the region, and China's rapid expansion in recent years has only made things worse. About a third of the world's shipping lines pass through the South China Sea annually. The area is abundant with oil, natural gas, marine life, and other resources, and no less than 6 countries are claiming land there as their own. Invoking geographical proximity, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan all claim all or part of the disputed islands in the area. China claims the entire South China Sea as its territory. In 2014, their 9-dash line was updated to a 10-dash line, now including Taiwan. In 2013, China began dredging in the South China Sea, moving sediment from the seafloor to submerged reefs to create artificial islands. By 2015, there were 7 new islets: Mischief, Subi, Fiery Cross, Gavin, Hughes, Coerton, and Johnson South Reefs. In forming the new islands, however, marine ecosystems were disturbed and possibly destroyed. They were either outright buried or killed by corrosive sand and sediment from the dredging process. Accused by the Philippines in April 2015 of killing 1.2 square kilometers of coral reefs, China claimed it had protection measures in place and carried on with the project. China also built docks, lighthouses, bunkers, helipads, communication towers, and other infrastructure on the islands. In September 2015, a 3-kilometer runway was completed on Fiery Cross Reef, with 3 civilian test flights successfully landing by January. Airstrips are nearing completion at both Subi and Mischief reefs. Radar facilities on the smaller islets, Coerton, Gavin, Hughes, and Johnson South, allow China to monitor surface and air traffic more significantly. On Woody Island in the Paracels, Beijing recently deployed 2 batteries of HQ-9 surface-to-air missiles and fighter aircraft. Rapid militarization of the area has tensions running high in the region. The United States, not recognizing China's ownership of the islands, sent missile destroyers near the islands last year as a show of force. China has repeatedly rejected international arbitration on the disputed islands and will likely enforce a strict anti-access denial strategy over the area once construction on the islands are completed.
Vietnam buys submarine-launched land attack missiles to deter China. Vietnam is in the process of equipping its growing submarine fleet with land attack missiles, a move that creates a strategic headache for China's ambitions in the South China Sea. Vietnam is buying a land attack variant of the Club missile from Russia for use on its Russian-made Kilo-class submarines. The Club flies under the radar horizon using a radar seeker to detect its target, which can be an enemy ship or a target on land. It travels in a zigzag pattern to evade enemy defenses. Once locked in on its target, it jettisons its cruise airframe and accelerates to Mach 2.9, while skimming just 15 feet over the ocean. With a range of 300 kilometers, the Clubs could be used to attack coastal Chinese cities, but they would more likely be used against Chinese bases in the South China Sea. Vietnam has contracts with Russia for 6 Kilo-class submarines and 50 Club missiles. It is currently in possession of 3 Kilos and 28 Clubs. A 4th Kilo is in transit, and a 5th is currently undergoing sea trials off St. Petersburg. The last Kilo-class submarine is due to be delivered in 2016, giving Vietnam the largest and most modern submarine fleet in Southeast Asia. China building airstrip in disputed Spratly Islands. Recent satellite images show China is building its first airstrip in the disputed Spratly Islands and may be working on a second airstrip. China has been reclaiming land in the South China Sea on Fiery Cross Reef, which lies to the west of the disputed Spratly Islands, an archipelago that is claimed in whole or in part by China, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Brunei. China began to turn the Fiery Cross Reef into an island in late 2014. Satellite images from February 6th showed substantial reclamation work, with the structure on the western tip. On March 23rd, new imagery showed runway and apron construction, additional construction on the western side, more changes to the terrain, and dredging activity. China has created enough space on Fiery Cross Reef for a runway that is about 3,000 meters long. People's Liberation Air Force runways in China range in length from about 2,700 meters to 4,000 meters. Other images taken in March showed reclamation work on SUBMARINE Reef that could also create space for another 3,000-meter runway. SUBMARINE Reef is only 25 kilometers away from T2 Island, known as Pagasa in Tagalog, in which China calls Zhongye Island. T2 Island, which is held by the Philippines and has a civilian population, was singled out last year in the Chinese-language publication Qianzhan, or Prospects, as an inevitable target of invasion by China.
China now has more diesel-powered and nuclear-powered submarines than the United States. Both American and Southeast Asian officials have voiced concern about China's military buildup in the last several years. Even before the People's Republic of China's recent military and naval expansion, its submarines were regularly patrolling the Philippine Sea. China now has more submarines than Britain, Russia, and the United States, with plans to build more vessels. China's more expansive submarine program now includes lengthier excursions into the Indian Ocean. The People's Liberation Army Navy has diesel and nuclear-powered submarines and continues to develop ballistic missile submarines along with experimental vessels. The armed nuclear missile subs China is developing will be able to launch missiles that can reach Hawaii and Alaska. U.S. Navy Vice Admiral Joseph Malloy says that while the number of PLA subs has grown by leaps and bounds, their quality is inferior to that of the United States's.
Joint drills with the Philippines may signal Japan's growing involvement in the South China Sea. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Lu Kang warned yesterday that joint drills being conducted by Japan and the Philippines in the South China Sea were undermining security in the region. Despite the warning, the Philippines and Japan today flew patrol planes for a second day, including a P-3C Orion surveillance aircraft near disputed areas of the South China Sea. The flights took place in the general direction of the resource-rich Reed Bank. Although it falls within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, China has contested this claim. Japan and the Philippines have insisted their joint drills are a peaceful exercise intended to strengthen humanitarian and disaster response efforts between the former World War II foes. While some welcome a growing Japanese presence in the region, Japan's military is stretched by territorial disputes with China and the threat from North Korea. Analysts have suggested that China may be placing Shenyang J-11 air superiority fighters on runways it is building on reclaimed land in the Spratly. The placement of the fighter, which is based on the Russian Sukhoi Su-27, would extend the reach of China's air force 1,000 kilometers further south. The Philippines and the United States are also set to hold joint military exercises in the coming week.
China has reclaimed more land in the Spratlys than the Pentagon previously thought. A new Pentagon report released on Thursday says that China's reclamation efforts in the Spratly Islands has grown dramatically over the last few months at a rate far faster than earlier this year. The Spratly Islands are a string of islands in the South China Sea simultaneously claimed by China, Vietnam, Taiwan, the Philippines, and Malaysia. According to the Pentagon, compared to the reclamation efforts of other claimants combined over the past 40 years, the amount of land China has reclaimed within the last 2 years is 17 times greater. Initial reports that China has reclaimed 2,000 acres since December 2013 are wrong, the Pentagon report says, and the real amount is around 2,900 acres. On the Fiery Cross Reef, China has built an airstrip, and at many of the reclamation sites in the Spratlys, China has also built berthing areas for large ships. Reuters reports that the 3,000-meter-long runway on the Fiery Cross Reef will most likely be operational by the end of this year. The new report, titled the Asia-Pacific Maritime Security Strategy, was required by Congress ahead of the 2015 defense bill. China said in early August that it has halted its reclamation efforts in the island chain, although many countries question these claims.
US pledges millions to equip Vietnam with patrol vessels. US Defense Secretary Ash Carter pledged to expand US military ties with Vietnam during a visit to Haiphong on Sunday, during the latest stop on his 11-day trip to Asia Pacific. Taiwan, Vietnam and China have all reclaimed land in the South China Sea. However, China has outpaced the others by reclaiming around 2,000 acres of land according to US estimates, raising concerns in the region. In the Spratly Islands, Taiwan, Malaysia, China and the Philippines have all constructed outposts, although Vietnam has the most with 48 in total. US Defense Secretary Ash Carter toured a Vietnamese Coast Guard vessel that was damaged after being rammed by a Chinese vessel during a skirmish last year. After Carter's visit, the Pentagon pledged $18 million to Hanoi to buy Vietnam 6 aluminium Metal Shark patrol boats. The Pentagon has called for all countries in the region to halt their island-building efforts in disputed territories.
The U.S. sends Australia B-1 bombers as China continues to make claims in the South China Sea. The United States military is continuing its efforts to deter Chinese influence in the South China Sea. As China continues to boost its maritime territorial claims in the South China Sea through the construction of airfields and artificial islands, the U.S. is increasing its naval forces and air power in the region to assert the right of free passage. The U.S. military also plans to station B-1 strategic bombers and surveillance aircraft in Australia. The aircraft is able to quickly deliver 84,500-pound bombs anywhere in the world at any time and is currently being used to attack Islamic State in Iraq. The U.S. Defense Secretary stated that Global Hawks and F-35s would also be deployed in Japan, while the military would add to the stock of V-22s in the country. The U.S. says China's ambitions has a destabilizing effect in the region, while the Obama administration has voiced its position to assert freedom of navigation in the South China Sea.
U.S. mulling direct challenge to China's claims in the South China Sea. The Pentagon is considering sending aircraft and naval ships to challenge China's territorial claims in the South China Sea, as well as demonstrate the United States' regular observance of freedom of navigation operations in the disputed waters. China, in contravention of laws governing international waters, regularly deploys Chinese Coast Guard vessels to waters within 12 nautical miles of the Senkaku Islands. That and its rapid artificial expansion of islands in the Spratly Island chain have raised concerns in the region and in the Pentagon. U.S. aircraft and naval ships have approached but have not yet penetrated the 12 nautical mile zone declared by China around the artificial islands. The Pentagon is now considering penetrating these zones, although American aircraft and ships will maintain a 12 nautical mile distance from the original islands. Since March 2014, China has begun reclamation work at 7 sites in the Spratlys, and China is also constructing an airstrip on at least one of the artificial islands. China deploys warplanes to disputed South China Sea islands. China has deployed fighter jets to the same disputed island in the South China Sea where they placed surface-to-air missiles last week. China has allegedly deployed Shenyang J-11 fighter jets and Xi'an JH-7 bombers to Woody Island in the Paracel archipelago. U.S. officials claim fewer than 10 warplanes were deployed. Woody Island lies 250 miles southeast of China's Hainan Island. It is claimed by China, Taiwan, and Vietnam. The U.S. and other countries are concerned that China might send warplanes to the Spratly Islands next. China has claimed Woody Island since the 1950s. The island is the largest island in the Paracel chain of islands in the South China Sea. China deploys surface-to-air missiles on disputed island. China has set up advanced surface-to-air missiles on one of the disputed islands in the South China Sea. A U.S. defense official confirmed the apparent missile deployment to Fox News. China reportedly deployed the HQ-9 air defense system on Woody Island, part of the Paracel Island chain in the South China Sea. The HQ-9 has a range of 125 miles. Satellite images show the beach on Woody Island was empty on February 3rd, but missiles were visible on the beach by February 14th. Woody Island is also claimed by Taiwan and by Vietnam.
India plans to build satellite tracking station in Vietnam. Indian officials say their country plans to build a satellite tracking station and imaging center in southern Vietnam, which would give Hanoi access to images of the region from Indian Earth observation satellites, including images of China and the South China Sea. The move could heighten tensions between India, Vietnam, and China. The Satellite Tracking and Data Reception Center will be built in Ho Chi Minh City to monitor Indian satellite launches. The facility will also be able to receive images from the 11 Earth observation satellites India has in orbit. The Vietnamese will be able to directly access images from Indian satellites that cover the region. These will include images of China and the South China Sea, as well as images of Chinese naval bases, its Coast Guard and Navy, and its new man-made islands in the disputed Spratly archipelago. The Earth observation satellites have civilian, agricultural, scientific, and environmental applications, but can also be used for military purposes. India also has ground stations in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Brunei, Biak in eastern Indonesia, and Mauritius. Colin Koh, a marine security expert at Singapore's S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies, called the move a win-win for Vietnam and India. It fills significant holes for the Vietnamese, he said, and expands the range of India's satellites.
Chinese oil company building filling station on disputed island in the South China Sea. Chinese oil company Sinopec is building a service station in the disputed Paracels Islands in the South China Sea. The station, along with the storage tank, is being built on Woody Island and will be completed in 1 year. The facilities will provide fuel to all Chinese-controlled islands and reefs in the South China Sea over the next few years, Sinopec said in a post on its microblog. China has also been expanding infrastructure on Woody Island by building a new airport facility and extending the runway. China claims nearly all of the South China Sea, through which more than $5 trillion worth of maritime trade passes every year. That claim is not recognized by the United States and its allies, which conduct freedom of navigation exercises in waters claimed by China. The BBC recorded a Royal Australian Air Force P-3C Orion surveillance plane conducting one such patrol on November 25th. The plane tried to inform the Chinese Navy, which did not respond. By stepping up military surveillance flights over the region, Australia is showing China it does not intend to stop operations in the disputed areas.
U.S. Navy set to challenge China with close island pass. The U.S. Navy has signaled its intention to sail a surface ship close to Chinese artificial islands in the South China Sea to demonstrate Washington doesn't view the reclaimed land as sovereign territory. China claims almost the entirety of the South China Sea as its territory, a contested area extending deep into Southeast Asia. Here, China has been busy constructing artificial islands on submerged reefs and wants to enforce territorial no-go zones around this reclaimed land. Under the UN Law of the Sea Convention, a Navy ship may pass within 12 nautical miles of territory without conducting military operations. This is known as innocent passage. The United States Navy plans to conduct such a move near the Spratly Islands to signal it doesn't recognize China's absolute claim on the area. China's South China Sea claim is also contested by Brunei, Malaysia, Vietnam, the Philippines, and Taiwan, countries whose 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zones overlap with China's claim. The U.S. says it wants to support free passage under international law. U.S. Pacific Fleet Commander Admiral Scott Swift said the U.S. does not recognize any of China's territorial claims.
China building third airstrip in disputed Spratly Islands. China may be building a third airstrip in the disputed Spratly Islands in the South China Sea. China had reclaimed a piece of land with a retaining wall about 3,000 meters long on Mischief Reef, which is suspected to be an airstrip under construction. If so, it would be the third Chinese airstrip under construction in the Spratly Islands. China is already building airstrips on Fiery Cross Reef and SUBMARINE Reef. The United States says China has reclaimed some 2,000 acres, or the equivalent of around 1,500 football fields, in the Spratly Islands. China's claims to territory in the South China Sea overlap with those of several other countries, including Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Vietnam.
Chinese Coast Guard causes new tension between Malaysia and China. A Chinese Coast Guard vessel, spotted anchored 93 miles north of Malaysia, is causing diplomatic tension between the two Pacific nations. Malaysia's national security minister said the country would protest what it called an intrusion by a Chinese Coast Guard ship close to Borneo. Malaysia said the Chinese ship was spotted anchored near Luconia Shoals, a series of islets within an exclusive economic zone claimed by Malaysia. China, in recent years, has caused regional tensions with its claims over virtually all of the South China Sea. Last year, China conducted naval exercises near the James Shoal Reef, also claimed by Malaysia, prompting the country to change tact in dealings with Beijing, senior diplomats told Reuters. Vietnam, the Philippines, and Brunei all also have competing claims to various parts of the South China Sea.
Vietnam is eyeing Western warplanes in response to Chinese aggression in the South China Sea. A Reuters report says sources claim Vietnam is in talks with European and U.S. contractors to buy fighter jets, maritime patrol planes, and unarmed drones in response to China's growing aggression in the South China Sea. As part of an agreement in 2009, Vietnam has already acquired 3 Russian-built Kilo attack submarines as part of a $2.6 billion deal. Reuters reports one Western defense contractor said Hanoi wants to also modernize its air force by replacing more than 100 aging Russian MiG-21 fighters. The nation has ordered about a dozen more Russian Sukhoi 30 frontline fighters as well. U.S. Defense Secretary Ash Carter has also pledged $18 million to help Vietnam buy U.S. patrol boats. Reuters reports if Vietnam upgrades its air force, it would have one of the most potent militaries in Southeast Asia.